Sean. I'm the council president here at Advent, and I'm going to welcome everyone to this really exciting, informative event, and it's multi-layered. This is a concern that is ongoing at Advent, the idea of creation care. We have a lot of things, if you know the property, you know that we take a lot of pride in our landscaping and our space here, keeping it as both beautiful and sustainable as we can, and that includes our native garden in the back. So I hope that if you have a chance, if you haven't seen it before, it's looking really, really great right now. So maybe when you leave, you can take a peek back there. We have another event that will include sort of a tour of the native garden in August. So keep your eye on our announcements, and you may want to return for that. This morning I want to welcome Kara and Sean from Eco Action Arlington. They work in collaboration with the county as an educational provider for all things environment and ecological. We have partnered with Eco Action Arlington already in a couple of ways. We participated in a pilot program that enabled us to get some care for a couple of our large trees on the property through Eco Action Arlington, and we also just received a new winterberry tree from a program offering free trees and shrubs to county residents, for lack of a better term. So we're familiar with them. We're glad to have them in the building today to talk a little bit more about your stormwater situation. It has always been an issue, a little bit more in the forefront right now because this new fee that the county has assessed is pretty substantial for a property our size. So it's really important for us to know what impact is stormwater having, why are we impacted, so significantly here in our property. This is one of the things that we can do to sort of offset that expense. Having educational events and sharing with our neighbors and getting all of us a little bit more on board actually helps us to get a little bit of a rebate on our so it's win-win all the way around. So I'll turn it over to Kara and Sean. I can't wait to see what you have for us.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Kara Simon, pronouns are she, her, and I am the program manager at Eco Action Arlington. This is our amazing volunteer. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Sean. I'm just a volunteer for Eco Action. I started volunteering a few months ago, and I've primarily been helping with these stormwater presentations because of my professional background as a water resource engineer.
Awesome. She is a great resource for us to have, so I'm very appreciative that you're here today. Okay, so before we go into the presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about watersheds, our watershed specifically. We're also going to be talking about pollution and how that affects our waterways. So does anyone know what a watershed is?
Shouldn't we use water? I'm just kidding.
So close. Any other guesses? Okay. Yeah, so the watershed is actually the property of land that is surrounded by our waterways. So when we think about watershed, we're actually talking about spaces of land. And the reason why that's important is because when we pollute our land, that goes directly into our waterways. So this is called an EnviroScape model. It is traditionally geared more toward students and children, but it's such a great visual for how different types of pollution really affect our waterways and affect our watershed and our land. So when we think about neighborhoods, we think about streets, all of the pollution that lands up on those spaces moves into our watershed. So does anyone here know where we get our drinking water? Everyone knows where we get our drinking water. Yes, from the Potomac. So all of these little streams that we have in Arlington, 4 Mile Run, Doctors Run, all of these little underground waterways that we have in Arlington all run into the Potomac River. And the Potomac River runs into the Chesapeake Bay. So that's, the Chesapeake Bay is what's known as our watershed. because all of the water systems that we have in Arlington run directly from Potomac into Chesapeake Bay. So we're going to look at some different ways that we might think about pollution and how that affects our water. So we know that plastic pollution is a problem, right? So I'm going to try not to get too crazy with this. So plastic we find everywhere, right? In parks, in neighborhoods, along our streets. We find it here at Eco Action Arlington. We do different types of trash cleanup all the time. And one of the number one things that we find in pollution is plastic. So food wrappers, cigarette butts is actually the most number one piece of pollution. That's because a lot of individuals don't know that cigarette butts are actually encased in plastic. So we find that tremendously throughout Arlington. Other things that may pollute our watershed is animal waste. So if we think about the different dog parks in the area, neighborhoods, individuals who walk their dogs may not always clean up after their pets, and it's really important to clean up after your pet because all of that pollution goes directly into the waterway. So we have our nice, kids love this one, our chocolate sprinkles. It's also my favorite one to demonstrate, but when you're in a group of, 30 or 40 fourth graders, they enjoy this demonstration. So some other things that we may pollute through our water system and our watershed is when we think about how we are taking care of our yards, how we're taking care of our gardens, in our back roads, in our neighborhoods. So pesticides and fertilizers are actually other ways that we start to pollute our watershed. I know it's a little bit hard to see sitting down, so if at any point you want to stand up, feel free to do that. I will also mention that all of the things I'm using today are food safe and biodegradable so that I'm not dumping this water into the sink and polluting our watershed. So that's why we've got fun things like sprinkles and parsley and basil. County does a great job. We've got some golf courses in the area. They really love to make those green spaces. So I'm going to throw on a little more fertilizer here. All right, so in other things that pollute our water system is, we know that right now Arlington County is in a pivotal point with smart development and sustainable development. So there's buildings going up all the time, there's construction sites going up all the time. And so what that looks like is around construction sites, even though dirt is a natural element of the earth, it is still a pollutant in the water. So when we think about construction being built, all of the dirt in the area can be pollutants for our waterway. This is just cocoa powder. This actually, when I bring this model home, drives my dog crazy because he can smell it in the case. So a lot of people don't think about dirt being a pollutant, but when dirt moves into the water, it actually changes the nitrates in the water and all of the different things that the water needs, can increase oxygen. So dirt, even though it is natural, is still a pollutant for our waterways. So I want to talk a little bit logistically about the types of pollution that can occur in a watershed in our system. So there's two different types. There's one type that's called non-point source pollution, and that's all of the different pollution that we can see here on this model. So we can't really point to a specific source of that pollution because if you're at the dog park, it's probably multiple animals. If you're in a neighborhood, it's probably multiple neighbors putting in pesticides, tending to their gardens. So there's no one specific point that we can point out that is causing all of this pollution in our neighborhoods and in our county. But there is a type of pollution that is called point source pollution. And this source of pollution is a source of pollution that we can point directly to. So when I teach this to students, I'm always like, show me your point fingers, where did the pollution come from? And all the students point to the factory that's dumping oil. So we're going to demonstrate that. So anytime we can see a point source and point directly and know exactly where the pollution comes from, this is point source pollution. Any questions so far?
Is that chocolate?
It is not, it's actually soy sauce. All the insiders here today. Any questions so far? Okay, so what do you think happens when it rains? All of this pollution laying around. Best guess, what do you think happens? When a huge rainstorm comes, we know in Arlington that flooding can be a problem in Arlington because Arlington and DC were actually swamps at one point in time. So whenever we get a huge rain flood, where do you think it all goes?
Stormwater rate.
Yeah. It goes all to the water system, right? So through 4 Mile Run, and we're gonna imagine that this is Chesapeake Bay and Potomac River kind of intertwining one another. We had a younger crowd, I would ask for help because students always love spraying the water. If anyone is also a child at heart like me and you would like to help spray the water, feel free to come up.
Oh, stopped it, just as you did that.
Sometimes. A big flow.
Yeah, big flood, especially here in Arlington, because we have seen that, right? How many of you currently struggle with flooding in your backyard? Anyone? A little bit? Yeah.
I don't live in Arlington, but we have it, yeah.
Okay, yeah. We're going to talk about some ways that we can help mitigate some flooding and stormwater today as well. All right, so this gives you a really good example, right? When all of this pollution moves into our waterways. I mean, this is a great example of what our water looks like. So one live in action example I like to give is after a huge rainstorm, take a walk by the river and take a look at what color the river is in Arlington, the Potomac River. It's usually about this color. So when we think about reducing pollution, even though there is a broader conversation about environmental stewardship and corporation responsibility, there are small things that we can do as citizens and as individuals to take care of our waterway. All right, I'm gonna make sure I've got my little bucket here.
Oh, yeah.
It is disgusting. So when we think about, right, when it rains and where our water comes from that we drink and how much it takes to really make sure that that's sanitized, I love this model because it really puts that visual into perspective of how gross pollution actually is. And knowing that like we can make a difference in stopping pollution or helping reduce pollution is just one really simple way of taking care of our environment and taking care of our waterways. All right, any other questions before we move into our presentation?
Does Arlington have a problem with contamination of stormwater with sewer water? Is that pretty much a decent problem?
That's a great question that I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know, Sean, if you know that.
I can give you a broad level overview of that. I think it's mostly a DC problem. I haven't been in Arlington very long, so I can't speak to that too much. But my understanding is that combined sewer overflows are the systems that are currently in DC. Arlington is not a combined sewer overflow. It's a MS4. I don't remember exactly what all that stands for, separate sewer system. Yeah, so the combined sewer overflow, everything goes into the same drains, and then at high storm events, all kind of gets washed out, hopefully diluted, but they have alarms in DC for a reason. So Arlington doesn't have that same system, so it should theoretically be that.
Yeah, we have problems in 4 Mile Run. There are these, not all, but things going to the Stormwater and have to close it down.
Yeah.
They just did
And
it about a week or two ago, and the drinking water was all shut off.
yes, yeah, those are things that I follow closely, partly because of this presentation and also just the nature of my work. There was also, if you remember, a few weeks ago, close to Jimmy Park and close to the dog park, they found that fish kill. And so when we think about different ways that pollution affects our water systems, it's also the wildlife and the habitat within those natural environments that get affected as well. So it's not just us and our drinking water, right, but it's the ecosystem as a whole. So when we reduce pollution, we're also reducing things like shutting off the water to make sure it's safe and making sure that the wildlife, the small amount of wildlife that does live in our water system are still being taken care of as well. Anything else? Yeah.
When I put fertilizer on my lawn and then I watered it, how long does it take for that stuff to get to the Chesapeake Bay? Any idea?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I would encourage you to find natural alternatives.
I don't have long.
Probably sooner than you think, especially if there's like a rainstorm that happens afterward, because what happens is that all of that sinks down into the earth. And a lot of our water systems, especially in Arlington, we'll have a map on the presentation, but a lot of our waterways are actually underground. And so we don't necessarily see all of the waterways that are being affected by the pollutants that move into the ground through the soil that connect to the streams and to the waterways.
But I can't even dig a hole in Arlington. It's so compact.
Yeah, I don't know exactly the scientific of how long it would take. I don't have an environmental science degree, but that's definitely something that I would be willing to look into and find out to see if anyone in our circle of network would know. Anything else?
Speaking of hard packed, is that the reason why our driveway out there can't qualify as a stormwater creek?
Yes.
Because even though water doesn't go elsewhere, it stays there, but.
Yeah, so we'll get into that a little bit. We'll talk about permeable spaces and what that means and what that looks like. Yeah. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to invite Sean to come help with this presentation. If you are ready.
Yep, I'm all good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. I have not given this presentation before, so I'm sorry it's not quite as polished as fun as the fire escape. I will do my best to keep it
Nothing is
interesting.
as fun as chocolate sprinkles.
Exactly. Don't always more fun. But I would say the focus of the presentation is more on the county ordinance. We will go over, of course, like why the county is picking certain DMPs as credit reductions and what that means for our environment. But we will focus a lot on the fee reductions and what that means for residents. I'm sure some of you own single-family homes in the area, and what that means for the church as well. So just a brief outline of the presentation again here. We already had a bit of a watershed overview. Oh, thank you.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
That works for me. It's like it for everyone else.
Uh-huh.
Good. And then a brief overview of stormwater and the current system and how things are going to change with the new assessed fee. Current challenges with stormwater in Arlington specifically, but in the Chesapeake Bay more broadly and frankly across the United States as we try and deal with variable storm events. Again, with stormwater utility, how things are going to change here, what we can do for credit reductions, obviously, we're very interested in that here, but just more broadly, voluntary eco action is a good idea. And then as Carol will come back in for an overview of the organization itself. So just a brief poll, show of hands would be great. How many of you are currently picking up and bagging waste for those who have dogs? Perfect, fantastic. It's always a good thing. Planting trees on your property when you can.
Here we are.
Awesome, perfect, yeah. More trees, always good. And using a rain barrel.
We've got 4 here.
Awesome, on the property.
And we've got 2 more coming.
Great, perfect example. And it has to be questions about rain barrels. Here. So these are all great things we can do to be stewards of our watershed, and it's just a good idea in general, apart from the credit reduction, which some of these will also qualify for. So the stormwater utility and the change of ordinance. For those of you who aren't aware of exactly what the changes that are being currently implemented,
Yeah.
they're currently implemented. So fees have been assessed already. The county is transitioning to a stormwater utility to fund the stormwater program. For those who have been there for a long time, property owners used to pay part of the real estate tax, which was based on the property assessment for the stormwater fee, but that is going to change to based on the current impervious cover. And you can see here, this is essentially how the county will be assessing impervious cover through aerial imagery, those sorts of things, just stuff in their computer and maybe ground truthing if they need. So impervious surfaces, things like roofs, driveways, hard packed gravel parking lots, those sorts of things, and patios. They'll have a fee assessed for the total acreage, which should result in a more fair fee, because those who have more impervious area will technically use the stormwater system more, and that's why they've also included these BMP reductions, so that those who have a large impervious area can theoretically reduce it and use the stormwater utility much less. There are more information and resources on the webpage for the county, the Arlington Stormwater Utility. For those apart from the church who have, sorry.
What is a BMP?
Oh, sorry, I should explain that. It's a best management practice for stormwater. Usually it's associated with green infrastructure. So we'll get into what those are exactly related to the ordinance later. But things like rain gardens, native plantings, planting trees, those sorts of things, impervious pavers. So, sorry, thank you for that.
And does the presentation include an explanation of what the stormwater program is that the money goes to?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll go over that.
Perfect.
We'll kind of review the challenges that the county is facing and, different construction practices that they're trying to implement with this money to help with stormwater issues.
And I just want to turn in real quick and mention, we do have some handouts. These come specifically from Arlington County, so if you do have more questions about the stormwater credit program, what that looks like, please take one of these. I will also preface by letting you all know that we at Eco Action Arlington are not allowed to answer any questions specifically about the stormwater credit because we are a separate 501c3 nonprofit. So if you do have questions about the stormwater program, there is contact information on here and on the website. So unfortunately, I can't go into the details and the weeds of that program because I am not a paid government employee. I work at a separate 501c3. So just a preface there.
Yeah, I'm a volunteer. So
Yes,
take what I
Sean
say.
did not.
Yeah, I can guess at things, but
We're a team.
Yeah, so I'm just curious, how come somebody from the county isn't here? Because I am concerned about what you just said. We can't ask any of those questions.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
I
a
would
great
recommend that
question
they
for them.
hire me.
Unfortunately, I cannot answer that.
Exactly, exactly my point. So
That's
I
on
gotta-
us, though. That's not on the county. We invited Eco Action Arlington to come and speak today. We could certainly do a similar event and actually ask a county rep to come and talk about those weeds. We'd be happy to do that.
And they do have those options as
Yeah.
well. Part of our agreement with the county is that we help them with these presentations because they have a limited amount of staff. And it takes teamwork to get the word out about all of these different ways that we take care of our earth.
Thank you. So we'll go over each of these practices a bit later in the presentation as well. But on this slide and the next are the listed residential credits that are available to everyone in the room and everyone proper. So the first section here is mandatory structural practices, which I think for most won't really apply very much. It's for new construction, and the construction firm will most likely handle all of that for you. I unfortunately don't have a lot of information on that as well, so that is available on the website. I'm sure someone from the county would have a better answer for that than I do. But the voluntary actions are most of what we'll be going over today. One thing I did want to mention while we're here is that some of these are ongoing credits, so as I understand it, they apply every single year. That's correct. So, okay, perfect. And then some are annual credits which you have to apply to every year, and they won't apply for the next year following. Some examples of that are tree planting and rainwater collection. Again, the manual provided by the county is 50 or so pages. They have instructions in there for reporting on each of these to get the credits and why exactly one qualifies for annual or ongoing. Just a brief list for voluntary actions that give a 5% reduction in the fee: conservation landscaping, tree planting, and rainwater collection, which I believe is the rain barrel. Voluntary actions that cover 10% are rain gardens and permeable driveways. And again, we'll review these a bit later. For the multifamily and non-residential, most of these are the same. There are a few additions, including stormwater mitigation event. Awesome.
Great job.
5%.
Check that box.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. Storm drain marking. Believe we have pictures of an example of these later in the presentation, but mostly just no dumping markers. Don't put poop down storm drains, those kinds of things. And then various things that also lead to action quite a bit are adopt a street, stream cleanups, invasive plant removals, and street sweeping. So why is the county trying to have a more fair fee leverage, and why are they, trying to gather more money? What are the current challenges that the county is facing? So one thing is flooding and climate change. We'll review why flooding is an issue apart from climate change. But of course, with climate change comes increased storm events. This is higher peaks in flood events, which means more water coming more quickly through our watersheds. And this means that these storm drains that were sized by the county, when they were constructed, probably can't handle all the water anymore, which means we get backups, problems with infrastructure. So trying to fund replacement infrastructure and to develop models, these sorts of GIS information system maps, so basically just maps of the storm system that is in Arlington, is extremely helpful in trying to combat all the flooding that we may experience here, and large losses in value for property as well. So.
And I just want to mention, so some people don't know that our storm drains are not filtered. So anything that goes directly into the storm drain goes directly into the Potomac River. So some counties, some cities have different ways to filter out the pollution, especially if it's larger pollutant items, but Arlington County does not have any type of that filter. So when we talk about really making sure that we're taking care of our watershed and pollution, that's because anything that goes down the storm drain goes directly into our water system. Yeah.
Is the tax going to be directed towards making those filters?
That's a great question. I don't know if it's in this or not. I don't know if that specific question is in here. I do know that they are looking at other ways to help reduce flooding, as we can see here.
Well, I was just concerned about the pollution. I mean, if we're trying to save the river and clean up the water, then maybe this tax can build that filter before the water gets polluted.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, and I would encourage you to talk to the county about that.
I think we'll review natural filters in the presentation, but nothing that the county necessarily install on the system proper.
Right.
So that is also for adoption, and that's one thing that the combined sewer overflows that we talked about previously for DC actually does. That's one benefit of it. When it can actually handle the system, it does filter that. But most of the time, when the storm that comes through, it can't handle it. So it becomes more of a problem than it's worth. So having a separate system with a separate filter is a great idea. And again, I'm not sure if the county's doing that, but it's a good idea.
Was there another question? Did you have a question?
Sorry.
So when you properly dispose of waste, so either recycling or just in your trash can, I'm assuming stuff that goes in the trash can eventually gets disposed of the dump. Arlington have a way to like make sure that kind of stuff doesn't like leach into the watershed, or like
Yeah,
does
they
this
do.
stuff that
They,
isn't recycled just also end up there?
yeah, that's a great question. I know that they have some of that protected at the trade center, so the place to take your recycling, I mean, obviously it also depends on kind of where you're at and how you recycle. Multi-unit buildings recycling looks different than single-family home recycling, so it really kind of just depends on, you know, where that recycling gets taken to, but the county, through any multi-unit building, if you do live like in an apartment complex or condo, they should have recycling on the property, and then the county takes that and disposes it correctly through the trade center.
Any other questions? So another challenge that we're currently experiencing is an increase in impervious surfaces. Arlington, even though it's already quite developed, is still developing. This was actually provided by the county here. That's an anticipated growth in impervious surfaces over the next 25 years or so. They anticipate about a 10% increase, mainly due to the redevelopment of single-family homes to larger complexes, which have much more impervious surface. So as more impervious surfaces are built, this stormwater gets to our system much faster, which increases those flows, which can cause problems downstream and erode away stream banks.
So going from single family, you mean like to multi-dwelling
Right.
units on the same property?
Yeah,
Okay.
like apartment complexes.
Okay.
Because single-family homes have a lot more green
Yeah.
space, a lot more landscaping, so things can move through a bit more slowly. They can infiltrate apartment complexes.
Not so
From
much.
the roof right to the system, usually.
But I can tell you that during the site plan process, committee process, that whenever a developer has a new plan, this issue comes up.
Okay.
It does. One of the requirements for a new development is that the stormwater discharge to the system is equivalent before and after development. It becomes a bit more difficult in terms of how that's modeled and how things get there. So the peak might be a bit higher, as in the flows that are going are higher, but the overall should be the same.
But it's related to the trees, because if they take the trees away, you get more stormwater. So every tree that they take away has to be replaced. I think it's like 2.5, what percentages. Yes, any developer, yeah. But if they cut down a tree, they have to plant a certain piece
On the same property.
Yeah.
So how are you gonna build an apartment complex on a single family?
architecture.
If it's really tall.
Build tree houses.
Tree houses.
Ah, tree houses.
I was also.
I know, I'm like,
I'll be first in line.
you're not making a shot.
So, as Kara mentioned previously, one big instigator for all these questions, why the county is implementing these changes when it's maybe not as local of an issue, is the Chesapeake Bay. The Chesapeake Bay has regulatory targets that they are trying to meet. There's an interstate agreement between Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and New York, maybe Delaware, I think, is in there as well. Okay. In which they noticed there was a lot of fish kills and a lot of loss of industry in the Chesapeake Bay, crapping, those sorts of things. So they were trying to, I don't know if you've seen the bumper sticker, Save the Bay, that's related to this. They're trying to reduce the pollutants that get into the Chesapeake. So one way to do that is to look locally, and each state has their own agreements, and they're meeting them at different paces. I come from Pennsylvania, they're moving much more slowly, I have to say. But each has a requirement that they're trying to meet by a certain date, so this program is a part of that. So pollutants, what's ending up in our streams? We had a great demonstration of that already, but just a list again, sediments, which, as Kara mentioned, it can cause problems. I mean, you wouldn't think just dirt can cause issues, but it can also move where water flows and create more flooding problems apart from the pollutants themselves. Nutrients from fertilizer marking storm drains is very important so that these things don't get directly to our waterways.
And that, so marking storm drains is a service project that Eco Action Arlington does. I'll talk about that a little bit more. It's actually really fun and it's simple. So I'm just plugging that in for a sec. Go ahead.
Is there any data on before and after? Like, does it have an impact marking the storm drains? Does it tell people don't put that here?
Yes, yeah, so the
Good.
county actually has that. We actually have to report back. So we get a map from the county about which storm drains need to be marked. And then we get the labels and then we, get a group together, go around the neighborhood, and then we have to report that data back to the county to let them know which ones they've marked. And then every year we do a trash tally at 3 different locations in the same 100-foot section, which tells them kind of where the pollution is coming from, how much pollution is in that area. But the county also tracks, based on storm drains, kind of the amount of pollution that gets into the system through which stream that moves into the river.
Great.
So a bit into natural filtering of pollutants. This is a really interesting map showing the historic streams in Arlington. It's kind of also delineated by the floodplain for each stream. You can see the different colors here. But previously when these streams were not piped underground, houses built on top, the water had a chance to get up onto the floodplain. It would infiltrate slowly. All those pollutants would get trapped and naturally filtered out through bacteria, all those other sorts of things that we love to see. But now we have, I think, 60%-ish, I believe is the figure, of the previously available streams in Arlington left. So it's even more crucial that as we're developing these new systems, we take into account what was here previously and if we can potentially restore these natural systems through other means. So what can we do? We've been through this quite a bit already, but only rain in the storm drain. We have metrics now, that's great, of what marking storm drains can do, what not having things come down to storm drains, the benefits that those have. Sustainable lawn care and gardening, reducing chemicals such as pesticides and fertilizers. Those get washed directly into the storm drain usually if they don't straight down into the grass. There will be some amount that comes off, so it's best to replace those with natural solutions. Planting natives and buffer strips along drains and along the edges of your property are great because those act as natural barriers. If you happen to place a non-natural fertilizer on your lawn, those are very good at making sure that that doesn't get into the waterway proper. Composting, mulching, aerate, just good sustainable lawn care practices, making sure things get filtered out and infiltrate a bit better. As we mentioned, the parking lot, when there's that hard pack, it's hard for things to get down through. Mowing high, that again, it decreases the runoff on your property, slows things down. It's very important to keep things slow. And then addressing drainage and erosion issues, that's a bit more of a county thing. There's practices such as stream restoration that trying to fix erosion issues that are from historic development, things moving through the system much more quickly than they should be. And then things that are already on the property here, rain barrels, rain gardens, and pervious surfaces are perfect to slow things down and filter things out.
Is grass good or bad, or neutral, or what?
Depends on who you ask.
Native gardens are better.
Yeah, I love to lay in the grass and I hate grass for all the reasons why it's not good for the earth.
That's a fair answer.
Anytime that you can plant natives, if you can choose pollinator plants, if you can choose, native plants that will soak in the water, is always better for grass because grass does not actually do much for the ecosystem.
What is a rain garden?
We'll get into that. We have, I think that's what we have the majority of the slides on at the end. It has great pictures of what you can expect when the rain garden is fully developed. So.
And there's one in the center of Long Ridge Park.
Yes, and the county is also, there are a few along roadways throughout the county. You can see that they've started to build rain gardens in the medians of the roads to really help mitigate some of that flooding and stormwater. Yeah, they're really
Yeah. On the pet waste, we always think about dogs. It just occurred to me, in multi-family units, when you have cats.
Yep.
You shouldn't be flushing it down the
Should
toilet.
not be flushing it down the toilet. No. Yep, it should all be taken and disposed of properly in the trash. Animal waste, also we think about deer, right? So there's conversation about how to manage the deer in Arlington County. Some of that has to do with them eating the native plants. Some of that has to do with their waste, right? So any type of animal waste is important to think outside the box. Yeah, great point.
As we were talking about the Chesapeake Bay previously, again, I come from Pennsylvania. One of the biggest issues with animal waste there is cows just roaming around in streams. Things can get pretty nasty pretty quickly in Susquehanna. I'm from Lancaster County, so lots of farms there. Things wash into the Susquehanna quite quickly. Once I started studying this and thought about all the times I had swam the Susquehanna, I was pretty disturbed. Again, it's very similar to the Potomac. You know, you have a big storm event, you see the Susquehanna. I mean, it's chocolate. It's pretty gross.
But we don't think about cats.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
very
true.
true.
Think about that.
I hadn't even. That was a good point.
No, and my building was trying to put in a thing requiring if you had pets, you had to dispose of it in the trash, and I was fighting it. I guess
That's okay. You know, it's when we learn, we grow, right? So
no, you can't flush it down the toilet. It goes into the
Your
storm
waste goes there.
right?
Yeah. Is cat waste worse than human waste?
I
I mean, it goes through the filtration.
It does. So when things are flushed down the toilet, they'll go to the waste treatment plant.
Yeah.
The concern may be different there, and I can't, you know,
Okay.
again, I can't speak for the
Not
county.
so bad for pets.
Mhm, yeah.
Or maybe it has a little bit to do with the litter that's usually with
Yeah,
it.
you know, litter you can't.
That's good.
Because most waste has litter attached to it when it goes into the system.
I can speak.
Take it off, well.
I can
Wow,
speak
it's a whole
bit more
thing.
Generally, for waste treatment plants, they are finicky systems. It's very difficult to have a treatment plant operating efficiently. So human waste is different than cat waste. The way things are removed, it's a multi-step process. If litter gets in the system, it might not get removed properly, in which case, when they discharge, they might not be meeting the requirements. That's my guess, but I couldn't give you the best answer there. So some of the things we've already discussed, these are some just great slogans to remember, and as we're running around Arlington after a storm event, it's as you do.
Walking the streets
yeah.
to notice the storm drains.
Yeah,
As I
exactly.
do.
So don't let your spring cleaning turn into pollution. Don't let your spill get into fish gills. As we talked about, grass, mulchers, and mowers, don't let your waste go over. And not sure where to pour. Make sure everything's always in orders.
Well, can you come back to the mulchers and mowers?
Yeah.
What's the rule there? What's the, don't let yard waste go over?
The
over
curb?
the curb.
Over the, into the storm drain. So like when you're mowing that strip of grass that's next to the sidewalk and the street, making sure that the clippings don't go over and into the storm drain.
It could be related to pesticides.
Yep.
It could also be clogging the storm drain, causing issues down the line, getting things stuck in manholes, those sorts of things.
Nice.
So there is a hotline for reporting stream pollution. This would be more related to our soy sauce problem for the industrial plant. But there are different types of sheens that you may see, oily sheens. You know, this is the typical thing you'll see in a parking lot related to a car. That's more of the issue that you'll find. But there's also issues with foam that could be a cleaning agent that somehow got dumped into the stream. And then there's also cloudy water, a bit more difficult to report on because it's likely going to happen for most storm events. But there is a non-emergency number you can report these things to. They may investigate it and find that there's an industry in Arlington that isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it is good to report when you see that. However, there is some natural oxidation that occurs. that could look very similar to these oily sheens here. It's just bacteria breaking products down. That's essentially what oxidation and reduction is. It'll look a bit different. It'll be a bit more red, and it'll just be focused in one area at the edges. So if you're concerned about it, it's best to report it, but there may be a case where it is naturally occurring. So we've already reviewed these, but now we'll go a bit more into each individual practice that is available for credit, and each percent reduction that you can get from each. One thing I did want to mention more on the slide actually is there is a maximum credit available annually of 35%, so try and get as much as you can off of your stormwater fee there. So rain barrels and cisterns, we'll start here. This is a 5% reduction in credit. It's my understanding that Eco Action does help and implement these.
We do, yes. We actually have an event coming up July 11th. So we're going to be, it's in partnership with the Northern Virginia Stormwater. And so we're actually going to be hosting a workshop. It's going to be at the Fairlington Community Center. Space is limited, so if you're interested, I would encourage you to sign up today because we can only host a certain amount of rain barrels just due to the space. We may also be hosting one later in the fall, but don't hold me to that because we have a lot going on. So it also depends on, we have to coordinate with Fairfax County and then with this other organization as well. But there is one coming up, and I think it's on the next slide.
Yeah, sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit.
But only private homes get a credit for rain barrels, I think.
Because only private homes have downspouts.
Right.
But we have downspouts.
Yes.
We should get one for this building. Where's Nancy?
It doesn't make profit.
We can check on that.
I thought we did.
I asked that.
Really?
So this does say multifamily and non-residential.
Does not include rainwater collection.
Yeah. I mean, it is listed.
Yeah, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah. That I'm not 100% sure
Yeah,
about.
it doesn't make any sense. The rain barrel workshop is on July 11th, by the way, from 6:30 to 8:30.
8:30, yes.
It's $55 to participate, but you get all the materials and you get to make your rain barrel. They give the instructions on how to install them.
Yep, I'll be there presenting.
Oh, you're the
It's
one.
on.
Another question.
Yeah, just curious, so once we have the rain barrels full, do we just repurpose it with the yard, or what's the intent?
Yeah, so the intent is to use the water that you're collecting from the roof to water your yard. So watering your rain garden, watering your other garden. Really the only thing that you can't use it for, you can't use it for cooking. So any type of gray water is still illegal here. But you can use it to collect, to water your different types of gardens and yards. Yeah.
We're using the form that we have to water the native plant garden and all the things up in front, except they've been dry as a bone for like 3 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah, these are dry.
And it's 5% for every barrel?
Yes.
So we'll just go over the construction of it and their purposes here. They are containers that catch and store water from rooftops. As you can see here, the downspout usually goes right into the barrel, and then we'll have a downspout coming off of the barrel and an overflow. If you can see the downspout well right there. They come in different sizes, but that's normally what you'll see. There is an overflow and a pipe diverter because sometimes storm events get quite large, and these barrels can't hold everything, but we'll review that, I think, in the next slide. They also include a screen and a cover to make sure that other litter and waste doesn't get in the barrel, clog things up, and sometimes cause some nasty water issues in your rain barrel.
If you walk outside and see the garden, Gary can show you how he installed our rain barrels and all of this that he's talking
Yeah,
about.
and we'll be doing all of that in the workshop as well. You actually get to build it out. So you'll see all of the different parts of the rain barrel, how to put it together, and the layers there.
I will add that even if you were not using it to water your garden, they are beneficial in that they slow the water down. The downspout coming off the rain barrel is usually much smaller than the roof lead that's leading into the barrel. So they do a very good job at trapping all that water, slowing it down, letting it infiltrate, and not getting directly to our storm system. So just another quick poll, show of hands. Who thinks a rain barrel can capture all the runoff from an inch of rain from a single family home or a townhouse? No? Anybody think yes?
How about I don't know?
I like that too. I like I don't know. So, we have some graphics here. I didn't know that. So, unfortunately, it cannot, but that's why we have the overtopping available there. So, just some quick calculations. Typical roof size is about 2,000 square feet for a 50 by 40 home. The 1 inch rainfall over that roof is equivalent to 166 cubic feet, which is a bit hard to just understand based on the figure itself, but multiplying that out to an approximate flow for a storm event, you get about 1,250 pounds, which is much more than those rain barrels can handle.
Yes.
That's why we need more rain barrels.
Exactly, right. Each more rain barrels is better. A 1 inch rainfall is approximately 90% of storms. So as you can see here, more rain barrels the better, because this 1 inch rainfall calculation that we have here is the majority of storms. I think we're ready to go over this.
Yeah, so there's just, if you just want the visual, there's some details. You also have the chance to paint your rain barrel, do anything artistically. So, like we said, the next event is July 11th. And I do have a QR code that you can scan that goes directly to the registration site at the end of this presentation.
So conservation landscaping, another 5% credit here. Replacing grass, pavement, or invasive plants with native plants. And we will go over what native plants are and some other resources that you can find that'll help you plant these gardens. But I'm not familiar with the area requirements. Again, that will be listed in the county's ordinance. So, rain gardens. Rain gardens are essentially bowl-shaped gardens that collect, filter, and absorb rain. They are built about a foot deep. They can be 6 inches deep as well, with gentle slopes, well-drained soils, and native plants. There's some calculation here about how much they can handle. So a 6 inch deep, 100 square foot garden can capture about 400 gallons, then a foot deep, 150 square foot garden can capture 1,125 gallons, which is the majority of that storm that we covered previously. So these are great for capturing and infiltrating stormwater on the property.
They're also quite lovely.
They are quite lovely. I find that quite lovely.
I just have, oh, I'm sorry.
Underneath that holds the water, is that how that works? Or what, I mean, you've got the barrel shape, is that something in the ground? Like a container? Or what?
It's
So the idea is that the water, we do have some handouts here about rain garden, but the idea is that the water would be a slow leak into the soil. So anytime there's a specific shape, then it slow moves through the rest of the soil. Yeah. So there's nothing like specific. Usually you can do it with compost. It's not like any type of plastic container, I think is what you're asking. It's more compacting the soil with compost and then mulch. So there's different layers here. This is a great visual. It shows you of how like that is collected and the water kind of slow sweeps out into, because mulch is a slow permeable material to use. There's a few different layers. You would do it with soil compost first, and then you would put the mulch on top, and then plant the plants, and then the water would slow
In the mulch.
Yeah.
some of the benefits of rain gardens, less lawn, less maintenance, less you have to mow. Again, they look quite nice. It is habitat for different pollinators, such as butterflies. It can catch and filter runoff and reduce erosion by slowing things down, very similar to a rain barrel, but much more pleasing unless you paint it at the workshop. It can improve water quality, replenish our groundwater, and keep water off our sidewalks and driveways. I think we have a few more pictures here of what those can look like. So just a quick show of hands, which of the following is true about rain gardens? If you're planting a rain garden, you don't need to mark utility lines. Hardy native plants can tolerate both flooding and dry conditions are good choices. Or rain gardens should have standing water at all times. B?
Yes,
Like B?
B is good.
Very good. So,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
Can one of those act as a rain barrel, and a rain garden acts like a rain barrel? Could you don't put your water from your drain spout right in the rain garden?
I would think you could. I don't see any issue with that unless the rain garden is already getting too much water, and then you have, ponding as one dumps into the other. But that's a good idea. If your rain garden is struggling a bit and you have some water in your rain barrel, it's great to know. Because normally the plants you would plant in a rain garden love to be inundated with water. So there are some plant choices here on the screen, various natives, but there's a list here. I think you said there's a resource around the table for native plants. If you have any questions about what to plant for rain gardens, look at the pamphlet. There should be something listed in the county ordinance as well about what to plant.
Yes,
But,
they do have it on the website as well, but so I do only have one copy. We can make more copies if you would like, or you're welcome to take a picture of this. But this does list all of the different native plants that are encouraged to plant for your rain garden.
Rain gardens are an ongoing, right?
Yes. So that would be, once a rain garden is developed, you get that 10% reduction every year. So we've already discussed about using native plants.
Is that ongoing or is that?
Yes, it is ongoing. And then this is a good example of what a rain garden could look like when fully developed. This is when it was first planted, and then lots of beautiful willows and flowers popping up along the edge. So make it your own, make it look beautiful, make it look how you want. And then I believe this is our last pervious pavers, potentially replacing the gravel driveway up front. This provides support, but also allows drainage. They can look quite nice. There's a variety of different options here, but again, they allow the water to get down into the water table, slowly infiltrate as opposed to going directly to our system.
All right, thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
All
I'm
right.
sorry, may I, have you finished?
No.
No? You're I've been wanting to say something. I have sat through a number of presentations in the past year where the presenters used standard conversational language to express what they're saying, which is not appropriate for a group. Why? Because standard conversational English varies. People speak up, people speak down. They run their words together. They emphasize by lowering their voice. This is perfectly fine in a conversation. People understand it. But if somebody has the type of hearing issue that I have, I'm not deaf, but I do have a hearing issue. And when you speed up, when you lower your voice, when you run your words together, I miss it. And so I'm really very sorry not to have been able to follow all that you've said, because I really wanted to understand it. And I'm saying this also, this isn't the first time, and which is why I've been upset, which is why I'm really unhappy. Because if you're gonna speak to a group, please learn how to speak to a group. Clearly,
making certain that every word gets expressed, which is not what standard conversational English is. And I'm not criticizing standard conversational English. It's perfectly normal in everyday life. But it's not good in a group, because there's always going to be somebody who's going to have problems catching up everything. Thank you.
This was videotaped, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Yes, it's been videotaped.
Maybe that would.
Listen to it
What was
again.
that? It's recorded.
If you wanted to
Ah,
try to listen to it again.
Okay. Okay, well, I tried all that.
So can you talk about French drains? Are those good or bad? And is that something that the county will take into consideration with your tax?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
French drains that
Um,
take water away from your property, and so you don't have house flooding? Do you know if the county takes that into consideration at all?
That I don't know. Yeah, that would be a county specific question, unfortunately.
And thank you both very much for your time today. I appreciate it.
and did you have more, or are you done?
We do, but
Yeah.
I also want to be mindful of time because we are at time. So
Mhm.
if we need to close up, then that's okay as well.
What did you have?
So I
Yeah.
just wanted to share a little bit about who we
Oh,
are at Eco Action
sure.
Arlington and what we do for the community.
Absolutely.
All right, so at Eco Action Arlington, we educate, advocate, and act to create a sustainable community by improving our natural environment, encouraging environmentally friendly behaviors, ensuring environmental justice, and addressing the climate change. We do this through a number of ways, but one of those ways is through the Tree Canopy Fund program. So this is a program that really helps to plant free trees on private property. So anyone who owns private property, you can apply for this program. Open enrollment is going on right now for fall 2024, and applications are due July 15th. So if you're interested in getting a free tree planted on your property, please visit our website. You can apply on site. You can see the list of trees that we have available. And then we also have a tree canopy equity program. And this program is to work in 13 different neighborhoods that are underserved in Arlington County. So anyone that lives in those 13 different neighborhoods can also apply for the equity program.
And thank you. Advent has been able to participate in both.
Yeah, great.
And can you also make recommendations where trees could go, like on this property here?
Sure. So we do work with a group called Tree Stewards, and they can do suggestions on species type or recommendations based on the property. If you are interested in getting that considered, we do have a link on our website where you can fill out a form and request support from our partners at Tree Stewards. Okay, some other things that we do at Eco Action Arlington is we have a volunteer energy masters program, and this is a program where volunteers are trained how to become more energy efficient. We also work with local affordable housing units, so whenever our volunteers learn how to do these different energy upgrades and efficiency upgrades, they then go into these affordable housing units and teach those residents how to make those upgrades and also perform those upgrades as well. It's a really fun program. I did it last year and really enjoyed it. I've also had a background in HVAC, so it was nice to kind of remember some of those things and get to play with caulking is always a good time. Some other things that we provide at Eco Action Arlington are service project opportunities. So that could look like trash cleanups in local parks or streams and roadways. We also do storm drain marking, which we talked about. So we actually go and put on those labels around the storm drain that say runs into Potomac River or runs into 4 Mile Run, depending on the location of where we're at in Arlington. And then we also do an invasive plant removal as well. So that might look like working at a specific part to remove English ivy, any type of like porcelain berry, wineberry, those types of invasive plants is what we do as well. And then last but not least, so here's the QR code if you are interested in registering for the Rain Barrel Workshop. Feel free to scan the code, that'll take you directly to the Northern Virginia website for the registration link. And I will leave this slide up, but I think, yeah, that's it. So if there are any other questions, feel free to let us know. And then hang on just one sec. I also wanted to mention this is the contact for the Office of Sustainability, which are the people that we're working with to provide the stormwater. So all of your great questions about the program can be directed specifically to this email and specifically to this phone number as well. So feel free to take a picture of that, and this information is on their website as well.
Nancy, did you have something?
I'm not sure you can answer my question. I'm just wondering, is there any way, because I keep thinking about the gravel parking lot, and you can turn that into a pervious surface again by digging it up maybe and reapplying the gravel so it's not packed? I mean,
Actually, I had an engineer come out and look at it a couple weeks ago, and we're looking between $77,000 and $83,000.
To make it pervious.
It's badly packed. It's very compacted. It's like concrete.
I mean, unfortunately, gravel is not a pervious material because it is always generally hard packed, and so that's when you think about, you know, a lot of people don't necessarily know that gravel is not pervious because the water does go through, but it's so packed that it has nowhere else to go once it goes down through that first or second layer. So it is a little bit tricky because when you think about trying to create these permeable spaces and do these different things to help reduce the stormwater and mitigate flooding, there's a lot of different layers, all the puns intended, right? A lot of different layers for how to do that in a way that makes sense for the property and for the space.
It's curious though, because the water doesn't stand there.
Yeah.
Really good in that first layer underneath, and then that seeps out to the.
Well, because the irony of that is that we're standing on top of Virginia clay, and water does not go through Virginia clay. You'd have to go down probably 40 feet to actually have to catch all that water. Correct.
Yeah, I'm just curious, is the county just gonna take whatever they have on file for your residents to decide what they're gonna back to, or are they gonna actually come out to the property and inspect it? Or is that a better question?
That I don't know. Yeah, we've had that question a few times, and I wish I had the answer, but again, I'm not allowed to answer your questions for the
They
county.
go for the property record, what the size of the property is, and then they determine a price for it, and then if you want a credit, you have to go to them.
Okay, but they have no, like, well,
According to the fact sheet they put on here, they're gonna do ArcGIS, they're gonna use aerial imagery, they're looking at your property.
They've
and
already
they-
done that, the whole county.
Yeah, and they've said, all right, this is permeable, this is non-permeable.
Property.
If you wanna challenge that, if you've got a deck, it's gonna be permeable, this, once again, according to their flyer, they're gonna count it as permeable right away. You reach out to the county, say, no, I've got non-permeable because there's not a deck underneath that, there's not a patio underneath it, and then they'll give you that credit back.
Yeah.
So the flyer that somebody had floating around here, if you go into the handbook that's mentioned on there, it tells you how to do that process.
And I did email the handbook.
Yes.
To
What
you,
if
Ingrid,
your
and also-
property elevates, the drainage only stays on your property?
I did not read that specific, and questions about turning this non-permeable, it does not articulate exactly how you do that in here,
My
but it's
property's
got
3
theirs.
feet from the road.
But that manual
And it all
is,
drains into my property.
Yeah.
so we have another opportunity. You gotta get a county rep in here.
Also, I got 3,
But
and they only price it as commercial.
but I would like
And
to
it's
thank
residential. I'm the only one that lives there.
Kara and Sean. This was amazing. You can see they generated so much interest, conversation, further questions. I have my action items. I know what to do next, but please take a look at the handouts that are there. Tons more information you can dig into. If you did not sign the sign-in sheet, please don't leave without signing in. That is both for Eco Action and it's also for us. And I'm just thrilled. Thank you so much for being here. And anyone who is a neighbor, thank you for being here as well. We're so happy to have you. And next time we'll get the county in here. Thank you, Kara and Sean.
Yeah, I just pulled that up. So here's.
I'm glad to go out there and show you. I'm not going in the heat unless you want to.
Was that a rain garden?
No, that's the labyrinth in Georgia. It's just a nice little.
That was an interesting question. That waste on the sidewalk. I'm working on policies of the animal, right?
As I just scrolled through it while we were talking, trying to find some of the addresses that is gives you consequence at it. But there's a whole section here towards the back where it's got like some specific questions. All right, this is what they said. How do I change it? What they say.
Yeah, I went down to the Steven, he's in charge of the program. He said, whatever your thoughts are. It was when I he sees building one to take care of